Good morning. I'm going to show you today how to make this little fairy garden with a flower arch. This one has got 2 slices of wood in it. There we got the 2 bases there, and you'll get some Gorilla Glue within your kit, and you just need to find a flat surface, and you've got 2 sizes there. I like to put the slightly smaller one on top of the big one. You make a step. There's 2 blocks of wood there with holes in, and there's a mossed wired arch that you're going to create your flower arch with. So take the big thing on a flat surface first, get some Gorilla Glue and just glue the bases together. It's quite nice to make a little step there for the fairy to climb up. You can put it wherever you like. There's no rules in this, it's really up to you. And put the glue on there. You don't need too much glue. The thing with the glue is you just need to be patient and you need to leave it. It doesn't like to be picked up and down because it won't glue. So you just really need to glue it and then leave it. And obviously it just needs to be flat. So with the pieces of wood, because they're all natural, you might just have to move them around a little bit to get them in their flattest place. And you'll feel it sticking, gluing. You can see that there's lots of different colours of flowers in this, and I am going to add the stumps now with the holes. And I like just to put them on the edge, a little bit of glue there, and put them on the edge of the bit of wood, and you can always decorate the bits underneath with some moss. And so that's what you're going to end up, a kind of base with a bit like that. Then you're going to put that to one side just to let that dry. Just work out where you're going to put your bits. So I've decided I'm going to put my sign there. So actually I just moved it along a little bit. So I've got enough sign to put my sign down. My sign goes on the half stump, which has got the hole in. And that's my next job. I'm going to make the sign. And I'm just going to glue the sign onto the stick, making sure that the end of the stick is free to put in the hole. So just check that it does fit. And then glue the back of the stick, put the sign on there, and then just leave that flat. And it will just glue, but you just leave it there and forget about it. Now I'm going to glue the base where I've decided to put it on the garden, and just leave that. So now I'm going to start doing the flower arch. So this is 2 bits of stick with wire and moss wrapped around it, so it's quite flexible. And I'm going to start wrapping the flowers around it. So I'm going to start with this big pink one, and then you just wrap and wrap and wrap. So little bits of moss probably will fall off, but that's okay because you can glue them on your garden later. But the more flowers you wrap around here, the more stable and secure the flower arch will become. So I'm just going to add all these flowers. You can add them however you like. I quite like to put some flowers on the underneath of the arch as well, so the fairy, when she walks underneath the arch, you can see lovely flowers around her. This is a summer garden with summery flowers. Sometimes I do a pink garden or a blue garden or a rainbow garden. That's sort of taking shape now. Looking really pretty. Now my base is dry as well, and I'm just going to dip the twigs in the glue just like this, and then I'm just going to put them in the holes, and then they will just sit there. And there you go, there's the arch. So that's the main part of the garden done. And now I've got the fun bit of just adding all the pretty flowers and the jewels and the acorn hat, all the little bits of treasure. And you can just spend hours just decorating this now, adding your stepping stones wherever you like, using bits of moss all over just to make it look like the fairy's garden's been there for ages. I like to put the little steps there so the fairy can just climb up onto her garden. And I'm going to add this bit of felt grass around the back. You can put that where you like. Again, there are no rules with any of the placements of these things. You really use your imagination and just place things wherever you like. I use this brush and then I use the end of the brush to stick it down after I've placed it. You really only need a tiny little bit of glue. It is really, really strong. but it won't glue your fingers together, but always wash your hands after you've got glue on your hands. There's a tiny little shell there. So you can just build the garden up by adding the pretty bits. Jewels and treasure, tiny shells, acorn hats. All these little bits of moss now can just be put around the edges of the stumps, around the steps. It's nice to put a little bit of moss and then a flower on top, so it just looks like it's been there for a long time. See how I'm using the end of the paintbrush there to just push the bits of moss into the corners. You can use any paintbrush. I just make sure that you always put the paintbrush back in water when you're finished with it, because otherwise the glue will just ruin the paintbrush and you won't be able to use it again. So really make sure you care for your paintbrush using water. Now my signs glued together, so I am now going to wrap two of the wildflowers that I left over around the stick. You can use a bit of the wire and the flower just to make a little bit to hold the stick on as well. It's quite pretty. So say there's a rose at the front of the sign, and then when you finish wrapping that round, you can save as many flowers as you like to do that. Oops, that just fell off, but that's okay because I just glue it back on again. And like I say, if you use a bit of the flower of the wire to keep it stuck, kind of like almost acts like a clamp. There you go, and that's in place. And then add a bit more decoration of moss and jewels, getting ready for your fairy to come and visit and sit underneath her pretty little flower arch. Add little touches. I'm going to put a little diamond in the middle of that flower. That looks really pretty. Keep adding bits of moss. Finishing touches. You can cut the wire flowers down and then just have flowers without the wires on. If you've run out of flat flowers or you didn't use them all in your arch, you can add them as shorter flowers or just cut them off entirely. And it's almost finished. But I've still got a bit of moss, so I'm going to carry on adding the moss. And the tiny little garden with the flower arch is almost finished. So put a little jewel in that shell. The fairy's little precious collection. And there you go. There's one tiny little garden with a flower arch, lots of treasure, little flowers, and ready to welcome your fairy into your garden. Thanks very much for watching, and